In my freshman year of high school, I decided to take a risk. I decided to try out for my school's beach team. This was a huge risk as this was something I had never even tried before, and I was really nervous about how it went. And when I first started, I really did struggle. I often stuttered a lot and couldn't quite get my thoughts out onto paper and couldn't present them in a good way. And I wasn't happy with this result. So I kept on working harder and working harder. I made it to all of my school's practices and put the maximum effort that I could into all of my tournaments. And eventually my hard work started to pay off. I saw that I was becoming much more successful and earning much more higher ranks. And by the end of my freshman year, I was consistently placing in these tournaments. I was super proud of myself, but that didn't come without a cost. I had to learn to work hard in order to become successful at speech. This leads us into today's quote, which is, "Where there are no thorns, there are no roses." I take this to mean that one must go through trouble in order to get things that they want in life. This can be proven in three examples. First, through the popular literature series The Hunger Games. Second, through the historical example of the Winter War. And finally, through the popular fable of the cricket and the ant. Moving on to our first point, we'll take a look at the popular book series The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is set in a futuristic and post-apocalyptic America, in which 12 districts are brutally oppressed by the capital, an evil totalitarian government. And each year, each of the districts are required to provide one teenage man and one teenage woman to go fight to the death in the Hunger Games. And the book's protagonist, Katniss Everdeen, is eventually chosen to go fight. This seems like something that would obviously be bad for her, as there was a pretty high chance she wasn't going to survive. But it ended up benefiting not only her, but also all of the districts in the long run, as it eventually caused them to rebel. Katniss used her survival skills that she learned from living in the districts to help her win the Hunger Games, and she eventually was victorious. This was huge, as she earned a lot of money that helped bring her family out of poverty. Not only did she bring her own family out of poverty, many of the viewers of this Hunger Games became disgusted by how evil it was and eventually decided to rebel against the capital. This ended up being very beneficial in the long run, as they eventually won and overthrew the brutal government that was oppressing them, which was ultimately better for the residents of the district, as they now no longer had to worry about their children being sent to fight to the Hunger Games and no longer had to worry about food being put on the table. This shows that what might have seemed like horrible at first, which is Katniss being chosen to the Hunger Games, in which she almost accepted the fact she would die, ended up being very beneficial, not only for herself, but also for the districts, as she caused a revolution against the capital, showing that she went through her figurative thorns, which was accepting her death and going to fight to the death in the Hunger Games, but she ended up with roses, which was finally being free from the capital and having food for not only herself, but for all the districts to eat. Moving on to our second point, we'll take a look at the historical example of the Winter War. The Winter War was a smaller part of World War II, in which Russia invaded Finland. Russia wanted to invade Finland in order to have more paths that they could use to attack Germany. And they thought it would be an easy win, as Russia, being the largest country in the world by landmass, would be able to easily defeat a tiny Nordic country, Finland. But boy, were they wrong. The Finnish fought their hardest, and the Russians struggled very much to attack this country. The Finnish were much more experienced with fighting in the winter, and they used skis and Molotov cocktails to throw at Russian tanks. This was such a humiliating defeat for Russians, and it showed Hitler Russia's weakness. However, the Russians learned very valuable skills. They picked up skills they used from fighting the Finnish, like how to properly prepare for harsh winters that they ultimately used to defeat Germany in World War II. When the harsh Russian winter set in while Russia was fighting against Germany, they used several skills they had learned from fighting Finland, like how to like combat in harsh winter, that ended up proving critical for Russia's eventual defeat of Germany. This shows that while Russia learned very valuable skills, they had to go through tough times, which was an absolutely humiliating defeat against Finland. But that ended up being well worth it, as they were eventually able to defeat Germany in World War II, and ultimately end World War II, which was by far the greatest good for both themselves and the whole world. Moving on to our final point, we'll take a look at the popular fable, The Cricket and the Ant. The Cricket and the Ant is an ancient story about a cricket and an ant, and a cricket and ant experience in fall when winter is about to set in. The cricket is not very concerned about about winter, and he spends a lot of his time not preparing. He spends a lot of time playing songs and just trying his best to enjoy the life. While an ant, on the other hand, is busy at work. The ant is trying his best to store up as much possible food and create a functional shelter for the winter. And the ant struggles while doing this. And the cricket does it because the cricket is not concerned about the winter whatsoever. But eventually the winter sets in, and the cricket ends up starving out in the exposure without any food to eat. And the ant ends up living off of his savings in a nice cozy home. This shows that this shows that the ant ended up benefiting much more through going through tough times, which was preparing for the winter when he could have been doing other things with the cricket that would have been more fun. Showing that we ultimately benefit through going through tough times. We ultimately benefit through going through our thorns, which could be whatever, from trying to save up food and supplies for the winter to learning from past experiences in the war, and that will ultimately benefit us. In conclusion, I've shown that the quote, one must go through troubles to have good things. I've shown that the quote, where there are no thorns, there are no roses, means that one must go through troubles to have good things, as proven through first, the Hunger Games, second, through the Winter War, finally through the story of the cricket and the ant, and even my experience in speech.